But I think if you approach this movie trying to give the people at Angel Studios the benefit of the doubt and trying to really understand what they might have been doing, at their best, it gives you the realization that, wait, this movie might be genius. This movie might be incredible.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to talk about right now.
Yeah, and I think that's just an attitude as Christians we should foster in each other just more often. I think it's just a general attitude we should have in the world. So,
the first thing that I've heard said about this movie, first major critique that brother seminarians have said this, people, commentators that I've read online have said this, Christian commentators and whatnot. They're saying this movie it's woke. It's super feminist. It's even like critical race theory. There's like, the oppressor versus the oppressed type deal. And so it's just fitting right into that whole ideology, which we are generally opposed to. So it's a bad movie.
Yeah. And I think as a prime example to that is one of the final lines of the movie, if not the final line of the movie.
Yeah, that's
right.
That
reads, it's the mayor talking to St. Cabrini, in which he says, "It's a shame you're a woman. You would have made a great man." And then the camera pans into Cabrini's face as she's walking towards the camera with a glass of whiskey.
That's right.
Right? And she says, "Men could never do what we do." Right? And so that's basically the way the movie ends. And so that leaves a particular impression, or I should say it could leave a particular impression on you.
Yep.
Right? And at least my assessment of that line was twofold.
Mm-hmm.
Men could never do what we do. It's kind of ironic, right? Because on the one sense, positively read, that's true.
It's true.
Men could never do what women do. Because men are not women. And women are women. You see what I'm saying? So that's objectively the case. I could never do what a woman does, but also a woman couldn't do what a man does.
Yeah.
If we follow this logic, again here, positively.
Yeah.
So you could read it in that way and say, okay, that's definitely true.
There's a feminine genius, right?
Yeah.
Which St. John Paul II talks about in his letter
Correct.
Letter on the Dignity of Women, Dignitatis Mulieribus, I think it's called.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you. And
Grace of orders already flowing.
There it is. Boom. And so authentically, we could be seeing Cabrini as tapping into that. Like,
Correct.
she is trying to get us to see the authentic beauty of women, of femininity. However, people who critique this will take this closing line of the movie, right, the very last thing that's said, and they'll take it as a case in point of, okay, like there's clearly an ideology in our world today that's trying to either say women are either exactly the same as men, like everyone's like no distinction, no even difference or complementarity between the sexes, is just like everyone's exactly the same, or that men suck pretty much and women are great and we should just empower them. And so if you are constantly on guard against that type of ideology and then you see this movie and you read it cynically, you might think, wow, all this movie is trying to get me to do is buy into this feminist nonsense that women are better than men, that men are trash, that it's a toxic masculine world and the patriarchy needs to be torn down. But I don't think that's what this movie was really. I don't think that's what the point was.
No, I don't think that's what the point was either. If we assume, again, this negative critique of it, then all of a sudden we assume the motive, which we think is either politically or ideologically motivated.
Right.
And so, and again, this goes back to why I kind of prefaced before we got to this point, because I think it's important that we don't just assume that. We do that all the time. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
The new Marvel movie comes out, and I'm like, this is going to be this, and this.
Political nonsense.
Yeah, it's going to be ideologically motivated this and this and this way.
Yeah.
And therefore, I don't go watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be vulnerable with you. When Barbie came out, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to watch that.
Yeah.
And I haven't, not now because of ideological motivations, but at least initially I was like, no, I don't want to go watch a freaking movie.
Right.
Because of this, and this.
Yeah.
But I can miss out on the good that's there,
mm-hmm.
And sometimes there are legitimate reasons to avoid certain projects.
For sure. Sure.
But I don't think this particular movie stands as an example.
Yeah, so I think what you don't want to do if you're a Christian, okay, let me rephrase that. What I would not like to see, or what I hope this movie isn't, is just like a women's empowerment movie, right? Like And that's what the critics are saying. This is just like feminist, like, just empower women, down with the patriarchy, but down with men. But I actually think that this is tapping into something that could be like an authentic and even Christian feminism, right?
Yeah.
Like there is something that women have that men don't have. In fact, I think I'm on record on this show saying that I think generally women are better than men.
Multiple times. I wasn't going to bring that up, but I'm glad you did.
Like there's a reason the most perfect human person ever exist was a woman or lady. And I just think that women have capacities for love and for suffering that men don't have. Now, obviously, there's a complementarity between the sexes, and women and men have equal dignity. And I'm not actually saying that I would value objectively a woman over a man just on any given occasion, but I do see that there are things that women are capable of doing that are so beautiful and so strong. And I think Cabrini is an authentic manifestation of that, which doesn't lead into this ideological nonsense about down with the patriarchy, down with all men, toxic masculinity. I think it's just showing a beautiful and a strong woman who is only able to do what she's doing because she is united to Christ. Right? That's the big thing. And we'll get into that. We'll get more into that in a minute, but that's kind of my charitable reading of this movie, which is why I enjoyed it, and I think it's good and worth seeing.
Yeah, me too. And obviously, you'll get the themes throughout. Joey and I are trying to read this movie as charitable as possible.
Yeah.
And so, what we don't want to assume is that this movie was, in fact, motivated by a radical feministic ideology. And if we read it, again, positively, we don't see in any way that this movie is in competition with men, but as Joey said, in complementarity with manhood. And as you kind of pointed to earlier, and this is kind of one of my arguments back to those who were saying this movie was radically feminist, I was like, why can't this be a model of womanhood?
Right.
Why not? If not this, then what? Right? Or something like it. Right?
Yeah.
If not this, then what? And again, we'll get to, I think, a more objective criticism.
Yeah,
but,
and to that point, if young girls are going to see this movie, I'm fine with them looking up to this woman as a model of like who they should be.
Right.
A Catholic nun who's given her life to Christ and who is just unstoppably bold and hardworking and fighting for the most vulnerable among us.
And intelligent.
And super intelligent, right. And not afraid. Mm-hmm. So,
also, another little funny anecdote regarding this critique, people have come up to me like, Mother Superior would never act like that. That's not true. If you've ever met a Mother Superior, you know that they are bold.
They are.
And oftentimes they have to fight for their existence.
They're
Mother
the
Teresa.
Deal. Mother Teresa was the same way. They called her the benevolent dictator because she told people what was up. She didn't take no for an answer when she knew that it was God's will and she was going after it.
Yeah.
And that's what you see with Cabrini. Also, we mentioned, Max, when we were talking about this earlier, and I don't know how much this is the case.
Yeah, me neither.
But what if the people at Angel Studios who created this movie what if they were ingeniously and cleverly trying to kind of cast a net out to those radical feminists and lure them in through some of these themes of, a strong, powerful, bold woman, but actually trick them into falling in love with this Catholic nun, right? Like, it's possible for someone who's imbued with the woke ideology to see this movie and find themselves sympathizing with this character, Cabrini. And then before they know what's happening, they're really good friends with this Catholic nun. And then maybe they're inspired to go learn more about her, right? And then it's like, okay. So I brought that up to a brother seminarian, and he said, I would accept that theory if woke radicals were actually watching Angel Studios movies, which is
a fair critique.
A fair critique, but it's possible. You know?
Well, and I think the way, assuming this is true, again, this is a theory that Joey and I have ongoing here, that if that was the case, it does appeal to people who would have otherwise completely dismissed it.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think it also used kind of very sophisticated, positively speaking, sophisticated marketing tools in a way that I've seen other Marvel movies or other the Oppenheimers of recent times or Barbie or whatever famous movies of recent times. It used a similar marketing scheme. It almost used the tools that these other movies that are largely secular used, and that's again a step up for the Christian media production companies. And so,
And if you think about principles of evangelization,
exactly. So yes,
right. This is what, and I'm reading the documents of the Second Vatican Council right now. We're talking about missionary activity and like evangelizing the world in the contemporary world. One of the things they'll talk about is you have to learn the world. You have to know the mind of the people that you're trying to evangelize, right? And who are the people that Angel Studios is trying to evangelize? Well, it's the American public. It's probably the Western world, the people who are going to be maybe having access to this movie. And what do we value? What do so many of the people in our culture value? They value
Freedom.
things like, freedom, boldness, autonomy, powerful women, right? And so I think that this is Angel Studios casting a net at those people and potentially drawing them in. And that's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because those inclinations, those desires, those things that the people in our world are experiencing and attracted to, they're not completely wrong, right? Radical feminists, they're not just totally crazy. They see something of value and they're pursuing it, but they're just pursuing it in a distorted way. And what Christ does and what the church can do is bring these distorted desires into alignment with reality and order them.
Yeah.
Right. And so somebody who's a radical feminist might encounter this movie and see Cabrini, who is a strong woman, but is also like, I can only do all things through him who strengthens me, right? Not through her or any girl, but through him, through the Lord. And I'm going to be obedient to the bishop when he tells me to do something, even though it makes me mad. Right. So there's this, I think there's something to that.